Hey, welcome to Genre Chat. I'm Caleb Walton, and tonight I'm really excited to welcome Ann Mulligan to the show. Hey, Ann, how are you?
I'm fine, Caleb. I'm doing great. How are you?
I am doing wonderful. I'm so excited to get to speak with you again. I know we met at the Blue Ridge Conference a few years ago, and I learned so much about characterization and just a lot of stuff I'm really excited to talk about. But what have you been up to? I know we were talking about a lot of, I can see your calendar. I know you've
Yeah.
got a lot of exciting things coming up.
Well, I'm really involved in theater. I'm the managing director of a community theater, and the town just built a $9 million performing arts center, of which we are the resident troupe. So,
Wow.
yeah, so we're putting on a whole lot of plays. We do 4 to 5 a year. So I'm the managing director, so I'm really involved in every single one of them in one way or another, whether I'm
That is
producing,
exciting.
directing, or what. So,
And I bet that's helped you a lot with characterization and things like that, because that all just goes hand in hand, the acting and then the writing and everything.
it
That's
really
incredible.
does. And I found last year that my writing has actually helped me in the theater more than vice versa. With
Really?
creating, well, yeah, we create characters when we write them.
Hmm.
When you take an actor and you take someone else's script, I'm able to use all of the things that I develop with a character and I know about them to help my actors truly bring out the character. It's kind
Hmm.
of the end result. It's the yin and the yang or the whatever. They work together and they go together
Yes.
well. And I've learned that I'm a pretty good director just because I know how to bring characters to life,
Hmm.
so
Exactly.
and it turns out I absolutely love to direct. So it's been fun.
I know I did a theater camp in high school for I think 2 weeks, and it was just so much fun. I enjoyed it so much. You just got to just be yourself and just be, over the top, and it was amazing. It was
Yes,
an awesome creative environment. That must be so much fun to be involved with on a regular basis.
it really is. It really is. And every cast is, you become a family with them and the crew. I mean, the crews are phenomenal. I've got the best stage managers and the best backstage crew of anybody I know.
That is
So we're
awesome. Well,
really
if I'm ever
fortunate.
down in Atlanta, I'm gonna have to stop by
Oh,
and
dude,
see
dude.
one of the plays.
We are so blessed. The city supports us totally. They're one of our corporate sponsors, and they're just,
Awesome.
it's amazing. So
That is
it's been
awesome.
fun.
Well, tonight I wanted to touch on Southern fiction. I know that's one of your specialties, and I know I heard a lot I attended one of your classes on characterization. I learned so much. I felt like I knew your characters by the end of it. So, well, tell me a little bit about exactly what you write, some of the series that you've done.
Okay, I do write women's fiction. I think my main way of writing is I always have an ensemble cast of strong women and going through life together, warts and
Hmm.
all. They're lots of fun. There's usually a lot of humor in what I write just because that's how I view the world. I have my Chapel Springs series, and there are 4 books in that series, and it takes place in North Georgia. And I have a series I'm working on that I'm going to be shopping soon that is the same ensemble cast of
Hmm.
characters, but I placed it in the Great Depression. And
Oh,
so that's kind
wow.
of fun. That's something different for me. But my agent had said that, it follows the same formula as what I do. Small town, lots of strong women, and
Hmm.
doing whatever they got to do to get through. So that's
I
fun.
love it. I love it.
I've
And tell
done,
me a little bit.
yeah, go
No,
ahead.
go right ahead. I'm sorry.
I've got a new book out that I got to do with 3 other people. It's a novella collection, and the
Yes,
most
I
fun,
saw that. I saw that advertised.
yeah, and the most fun for me was the first conference I ever went to at Ridgecrest at the Blue Ridge Mountain Christian Writers
Hmm.
Conference was in 2004, I believe it was. And Eva Marie Everson was the very first teacher that I took a class from.
She's amazing.
When I sold my first book, she was my editor.
Really?
And now she's my co-author in this book. So for me, it's kind of come full circle, and it's been a really exciting journey for that, because I love her books and I love her, and it's just been delightful. Yes, so we have a Southern season that we just came out in November.
Yes, I remember seeing that advertised. I think you and Eva Marie had put that on Facebook, and I was like, oh, that's so exciting! So many awesome people on the same project.
I'm really proud of the book. It's a good book, and we each have our own, we each have a season that our story takes place in. So those are romance, and most of them are women's fiction. That was a new adventure for me in romance, and discovered I liked it. It was kind of fun. So.
That's awesome. Well, what sets this genre apart? Setting novels that are written in the South and are about strong female characters, what sets that apart from other genres? What are some of the characteristics and some of the things that attracted you to that genre?
I don't know that I don't know that I necessarily chose it. I think it chose me. It's just what I write. I live here in the South. I write about people where I live. And there is something, I mean, we've all seen Steel Magnolias. We all have known that. And that's quite true of Southern women. They are very, very strong, but I don't know, it's part of the romance of the South that's a little bit different than some areas. I mean, in fact, what is it? Eva Marie says, we don't hide our crazy relatives in the South. We put them on the front porch and celebrate them.
I love that. That sounds like my family.
There's it's just like I say, there's a romance about the South. There's just something there, and the women are strong, and there's, I don't even know how to say. It's just a worldview, I guess, just like a Christian worldview is. If we write with a Christian worldview, we don't necessarily choose it. It just kind of comes out. And that's what it is. Yeah.
Expressing who you are.
It is. It is. I've had a couple of books that take place both in the South and in New York. And because I did live there for a while. And so parts of that, I blended the two. But most of them are in the South. It just happens, Caleb. I don't know what to tell you.
Did you find that the dynamic of the story changed with the location, or did you still include a lot of like the Southern charm and the different things, with the characters?
Well, my main character was from the South and from the Atlanta area and got a job in the North. So that's a book I have out called When the Bow Breaks. And it's available on Amazon, and it's a political thriller a little bit.
That sounds interesting.
I had no idea what it was. I was writing a book. I thought it was women's fiction, but it isn't. I've told it's either romantic suspense or, but anyway, it takes place. It's involved around politics. And
I love it when people ask you what genre you're writing, and you're like, I haven't figured that out yet.
That's right. I write contemporary fiction. It's just kind of a melting pot for those for some things. And I found that the market has changed. People will read, if they like the way you write, they read anything you write. And I've noticed a lot of authors are doing cross-genre work. And for a long time, everybody wanted you to stay within a certain genre that you started out in. And because my books all deal with that ensemble cast, they followed that same, no matter where the story took it. Let's put it that way. So I don't know. It's hard to say. But yes, the southern part of me is in all of them. You'll always find a few characters that are really, really Southern. Nice to see you.
I have a friend of mine that moved down from Philadelphia. I feel like there's a mass exodus from Philadelphia to South Carolina. I know like 5 or 6 people that recently moved from Philadelphia to South Carolina. And she
Yeah.
told me the other day, she said, I need you to come to my apartment building and translate for my neighbor because she's very, very Southern and she's using all of these catchphrases and slang words and I can't understand anything she's saying.
How
I said, you need
funny.
me to come down and translate the Southern. She said, please. So, yes, there's
I
something very
remember
special about being in the South.
sometimes it is, and when you're writing, you've got to be careful. That's not what makes the story Southern.
Hmm.
But I remember, it's funny, something I've always said is I swanny. And
Yes,
you
yes,
know the saying, right?
yes.
Now, not everybody does. And it's interesting, even though some people raised in the South, there are just certain pockets where people seem to use it. And I
Hmm.
remember one of my critique partners a long time ago got on me about putting it in a book. She said, I've never heard of such thing, and I live in the South. Then when she got married, she told me at their wedding reception, she turned around and her new mother-in-law said something, and well, she says, I swanny. It was just gorgeous. So she had to take back that my swanny was definitely Southern.
I have an aunt who says that all the time, constantly. So
Well,
yeah,
you
I
know
know exactly
why?
what you're talking about.
You know
Hmm.
the origin, don't you? A
Isn't it like
lady, a lady doesn't swear.
hmm.
So she wouldn't say, I swear. She says, I swanny.
And that's very Southern. That is the
It
whole
is.
logic behind it. It's very Southern.
That's exactly what it's about. There is a
Hmm.
logic behind it that, unless you were raised with it, you might not know. But
A
it's pretty fun.
psychology.
Yeah, they're pretty funny.
Hmm.
It's like anyone born and raised in the South, the young woman knows if your neighbor has trouble, you take him a plate of fried chicken. If it's
Yes,
really bad, you throw in a banana pudding.
yes, yes, or a casserole, some kind of
Yes,
generic casserole. Yes,
absolutely. Yep,
yes,
that's what it is.
exactly. If you
Oh,
have prayer
yes.
meeting, you automatically say, "What do I need to bring? Do I need to bring a cake? Do I need to bring?"
Exactly.
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 Well, what is some stuff? Where do you draw inspiration from some of the storylines? I know you were talking about how sort of the setting and the character all sort of play into how the story unfolds. What are some things that inspires you in plotting out your novels?
Usually, it's an idea, basic idea. For my Chapel Springs series, for the first book, it was an overheard conversation, and
Really?
it was about marriage and what this young woman thought, and I just I ran with it. I thought if she thought that, a lot of people would, and I ran with it, and it became the story. Now, the
Hmm.
second book in the series, I had a phone call from our older son one day, and he was a widower by this time, and he said, he called me up and he said, Mom, I sent you a couple of photographs. I emailed him. Take a look and call me back. Click, and he hung up on me. So I opened up email and I looked, and here's this nice looking young woman, and definitely not from here. And the second photo, she's in a wedding dress. I hit speed dial. And I said, what is it? Well, he met her. She's from Colombia, South America. He met her in a chat room for Colombian women to meet American men,
Hmm.
and knew her for about a year, flew to Colombia and married her, and came back and spent another year getting her up here.
And
Now,
this is the first you had heard of it.
this was the first I had heard of it. Now, our other son knew. My grandchildren knew. We did not know. And I
Oh
told him
my
for that
goodness.
it's going in a book. And it did. And that became Chapel Springs Survival. I had to change much of the story because my daughter-in-law was the best thing that ever happened to him.
Hmm.
Absolutely adore her. And the funny part of it is, the funniest part now is that his younger brother likes his sister-in-law so much. He went to the same chat room, met a young woman. Yeah. But this time he told us, this one told us, and we were in on it. And
See, you couldn't have written that.
No, I know. After a lot of prayer, he flew down there and they got married. And we're working now on getting her up here legally. And he's just very, very happy, So it worked out for them. But I thought it was pretty funny when the second one did it.
That is hilarious. They do say that life is more wildly more of a wild adventure than fiction
yes,
can be sometimes.
And you have to be careful how you do it and what you use of it. But it worked as the inspiration for the story. Now, in my story, the mother-in-law and the daughter-in-law were like this. And in real life, my daughter-in-law and I I adore her. I absolutely love her to death. So it was fun. And you have to take liberties, but you get the inspiration, like you say. You get the idea. The
inciting incident, the thing that makes everything that ruins your character's lives.
I have people that I actually have put in my books that are real people. And with their permission, I've used them, name and all, because I've got the wonderful, wild character to use. And I've done it, never for a main character. It's always a sidekick character or someone that I'm using as a Q factor or something. So
I know a few people like that too, and I've threatened them. I said, you're such an entertaining friend. I'm gonna make a character out of you one day, and they get excited. They think it's a great idea. So.
Actually, most people do, yeah, and especially if you do it right. I know for the one gal, she's so precious. She spent her life in her yard doing yard work, and you know what life in the sun will do to you. And I said, even in the book, her wrinkles have wrinkles. And they do. And she's adorable. And she's one of my biggest supporters in the theater. And she didn't mind. She thought it was funny. She knew it,
it was a Southern novel, so as long as you say bless your heart afterwards,
that's absolutely
then it's not
right.
offensive.
That's absolutely right.
Well, speaking of characters, I learned so much from you in your class at Blue Ridge about characterization and about getting inside their head and figuring out what makes them tick. Where do you go about coming up with the main characters? And then I know you talked about the difference between two-dimensional and three-dimensional characters.
We did. Two-dimensional, in fact, I pulled some material down, so I'm going to go back and read it a little bit. A two-dimensional character is not fully developed. Your main characters are fully developed, but they serve as a background, like in a piece of artwork. If you don't have that two-dimensional background, the main thing doesn't pop at you, doesn't pop out. So they tend to they're like little puzzle pieces. They're part of the bigger picture, but they allow the main character to pop. They are flat. They lack the depth. They're only partially developed, and they're very often stereotyped. In my Chapel Springs series, I have got the mayor in the town is my main character's nemesis. And he is very definitely two-dimensional. He's a good old boy kind of thing. And he's always blaming Claire for something. And he's two-dimensional. He's not extremely well developed, but he works for her. He's a vehicle to provide her with her plot, with many things to do. They bring the story to life. They add some of the fun of the story, and they're a necessary reality for our main characters. So they help lay the underground for the believable character, for the three-dimensional, and allow them to stand out even more. If everybody was three-dimensional, it would be difficult. You wouldn't have.
It would be overwhelming, and especially from a writer's perspective, you would feel obligated to tell everyone's story.
Right. And they exist as a typical example of a type of a person. And they fit neatly into the story and the setting. They blend into the background more to enhance the mood and let the main character, let us explore their reactions and their thoughts by their reaction to the character. So that's kind of what two-dimensional characters are about, and they're vital in a novel. They really are. You need them.
Mm-hmm. You do, absolutely.
Yeah.
And I know you were also speaking, one of the things I wanted to ask you about is the lies that characters believe about themselves.
Yeah.
There was so much depth in that I had never thought of. I mean, so much psychology behind how they view the world.
Right. And the same happened for me. When I first learned about it, it was like a whole world opened up to me. And it was, her name's gone right out of my head. Anyway, I know, Amy Wallace. Whew, there we go. Amy Wallace taught me about it. And she was doing a workshop for us at our ACFW chapter meeting. And she had studied psychology in college. And this is where this came from. And as a novelist, we can use it happening anywhere in their lifetime. But most people, their lies develop when they're a small child. You know, usually under 5.
Because this is true for real people as it is for fictional characters.
Oh, yeah. Oh, this is where this came from. I mean, this is for real people. This happens to us all the time. And as a small child, they don't rationalize. And the lies are things like, I'm a disappointment, and or I'm not good enough, and I'm defective. There's something wrong with me, or I'm too much to handle. And another big one is, it's all my fault, or I'm helpless, or I'm unwanted or unlovable, and I'm bad. And some of them can be symptoms of the other. And like I tell people, don't try to give your character more than one, really, because it gets complicated. But
even though we probably have several that we're trying to deal with subconsciously, it would be sort of confusing for a character to have that many conflicting.
Right. It's interestingly enough, one of my favorite ones is the one that I'm helpless or powerless to fix things. And that leads to a fear of being controlled, which is an interesting characteristic to give someone. I know a couple of my critique partners and I will sit and really, when we're just beginning, we're going to we have a what if, and we decide, okay, what's this character's background? What's their lie? What do you think? And what fits the story? So you can manufacture it as the creator of a character, that what his and what her lies are, how they face their world, and where the conflict comes from. And this is where you can develop a lot of conflict for a story, is through the lie that they believe, and then it colors their whole worldview. If a man thinks he's not good enough, that's a great lie for someone who's going to be a warrior, a policeman, an FBI, that kind of thing, because they're out to prove it's true. It's not true, I mean. And so they're going to jump into danger and in all kinds of things to prove they're good enough. So it really can deepen the characteristic. It also gives the character a wound that they're hiding and makes them a little bit vulnerable. So, and then of course,
I can remember it was such a light bulb moment when I realized that my protagonist thing was, it's all my fault.
Yeah.
And I just said, oh, well, that explains why he's doing everything he's doing. Especially if it's partially true, that a lot of the problems can trace back to them. Then you can really play with it and drive them crazy.
It does. See, and that's why when we can get to know it, what we give them is the motivation to do what they do. And if the motivation is there, we follow it. That's like I always point out the Scarlett O'Hara thing. She was not a nice girl. I mean, and yet we all rooted for her because we
Hmm.
understood her motivation was the land. That was the only thing that was permanent, that was stable in her entire world, was to save that. And she did everything she could. And we understood it. And
Hmm.
motivation is everything. You can plot a novel through the motivation.
Exactly.
So,
And as long, like you say, as long as you can identify with the why, you can
yes,
excuse, I mean, in your mind, you can excuse some of the flaws and
exactly.
accept the character. Yeah. And that makes
Exactly.
so
That's
much
right.
sense. That makes so much sense.
It does. And for me, it was a light bulb moment too. And
Hmm.
that's why it's so much so that I wanted to teach it
Hmm.
and share it with other people too. So yeah, I love
Hmm.
it.
I do. I would love to study psychology a little bit more in depth because I feel like you could get so much knowledge for writing and for
Oh,
characterization.
absolutely. You really can. You really
Hmm.
can. I know a lot of people who study even through police forensics and things. You know, if they write
Hmm.
that kind of book, Ronnie Kendi writes wonderful wounded warriors and FBI stuff, and
Hmm.
she studies all of that. And it's a little heavy. I'm queen of the big honkin' chicken club, so I usually don't read those. But to do that kind of a book and have it realistic, you've got to know the psychology that the guys go through. You've got to know everything about them.
Hmm.
So
And it really
it's
does
all
make it.
motivated.
You can tell when you're reading if they've done their research. Even if you don't know anything about the field or about what is or is not realistic, you can tell the difference between
You
a
can.
well-researched book and a not well-researched book.
You sure can. You
Hmm.
sure can. I had one of my best compliments. Somebody asked me if I had been a nurse because of an opening scene I have in a book that it's not published yet. I hope one day it will be, but I haven't pushed it. But I have one of my son's best friends is a paramedic.
Hmm.
And so I did extensive research and interviewing with him. And I didn't go too terribly deep, but for a couple of pages, you are in a trauma center. And I had people ask if I'd spent time as a nurse. And that was great. That said, okay, I did my research.
When you find that person, and it probably you have to sort of rein in your excitement as a writer, but when you find that person that has the not the background of whatever you need to know, and you get
Yeah.
really excited. One of
Yeah.
my best friends mentioned that his dad is a professor at college, and I knew that, and I was like, okay, what does he specialize in? He said, oh, he specializes in some sort of physics and the effects of radiation on the human body. And I'm writing I'm writing a sci-fi, a
Go.
post-apocalyptic sci-fi novel, and I
Oh,
said,
I love it.
I was
Yeah.
so excited. I said, I have to
Yeah.
meet this person. You know?
Oh, that's great. I know I've done the same thing. I've
Yes.
done the same thing for stuff. I've used friends. A real good friend of mine, and she helps in the theater a lot, is a retired forestry law enforcement. And yeah,
Wow.
so I've used
Interesting.
her, and I tell other friends because she loves to help other authors. So if you
Hmm.
ever know anybody who needs that, we've got a contact.
That's awesome. And once you build that network, it's so amazing to
It is.
you want to sense that out everywhere. I was at a class one time for actually I mean I work for Allstate, and I
Hmm.
was at one of the training classes, and one of the ladies that was leading it mentioned that she used to be in law enforcement. I said, "Oh, really?" I said, "What did you do?" She was like, "Oh, I was in like the special victims unit on the Charleston City Police Department." I said,
Ooh.
can we please have lunch? I was so excited
Yeah, yeah.
to get so much information from her. But it really is. The research is half the fun, is
Oh,
getting in
I
there.
love research, and even
Hmm.
writing contemporary. I learned the hard way. I almost wrote myself into a corner with Chapel Springs Revival, the first
Hmm.
book in the series, and I wrote that a Warm Springs had cooled. Now I found out that, well, while it is possible, it is highly improbable. And I had to get it fixed. And so I found a geologist that helped me, and we came up with the plausible reason. Usually it's man-made. Something caused something to, anyway, it worked. It worked. But I was over 50,000 words into this book, and I thought, oh no, I'm going to have to chuck the whole book. But I found,
oh, that's terrifying.
I know. And that's where the author network, our ACFW, is so great, because I put a call out to the loop. Does anybody know anything, or have a husband or have a wife, somebody who's a geologist? And they connected me with people, and 10 minutes, and I had my setup.
That's amazing.
I know.
That is amazing. Because it only takes just one little thing that's inconsistent to just shatter the illusion for somebody.
Yeah, exactly.
Even the best people, I heard just the other day, someone was talking about, and I honestly can't even remember the name of the author of the book, but it was something very well known. And they said, this happens to be my special field, my field of specialty right here. And there was one thing that drove their plot that no one else would have picked up on that being impossible, but I knew there was no way that would happen, and I couldn't even finish the book. And I was like, if someone that's very like New York Times best-selling can make a mistake like that, then any of those candidates very easy to watch out for.
You really have to. And I didn't want to. Actually, what happened, it turned out to make a much better story, and it ended up going all the way through 3 books, I think. I can't remember if it was the 3rd or 4th book that they finally got the solve in. I can't remember which one, but they did. And it made a good story. So that part was fun. It worked out well for me, instead of being a big pickle.
Exactly.
Research is so important.
Absolutely. And I know you've kind of touched on this a little bit, especially with the general location of the South and the psychology behind whatever area it's located in. But what about the specific setting, the town and the different things, especially in a Southern set novel? Right. How do you establish the setting and just make it really memorable and nostalgic almost for a lot of people?
For me, most of mine are fictional towns. I don't want someone coming back to me and saying there never was a drugstore on that corner, or there's no cafe over there. I want what I want. So I usually take, actually, my Chapel Springs series. My husband says Chapel Springs is in Hidden Valley, but I made up. But I based it on Black Mountain and Dahlonega, Georgia, and Black Mountain, North Carolina.
Black Mountain is such a nice town.
I love it. I love the nostalgia of it. I love the smallness of it. I love the fact that I can walk it all in a very short time. And that's what I use a lot of times to create my towns, is just something I've created up there. Now, in the Southern Season book, my mayor had been asking me for ages to write a story and set it in Sugar Hill. So I finally did. And I had to take some liberties, because Sugar Hill never had a downtown. It was a bedroom community that incorporated just a little over 75 years ago. And they had a little city hall, and that was the center of town. That was it. So they have since then, in the last few years, been building a downtown. But for the book, it wasn't done yet, so I had to take liberty, which I did, and just put it in an author's note. But in another book I have, in a collection, I have quite a bit of this new town, the new downtown of Sugar Hill. And I just had to be very careful where I place things, how I had them going places,
I've always wanted, and for the type of novel that I'm writing now, it wouldn't be a smooth, it wouldn't really work out. But there's a little town I worked in for about a year after I graduated high school called Hartsville, South Carolina. And it is I would love to set a novel there, because there's so many characters that are actually there in town.
Oh,
Like,
yeah.
there's so many memorable people just that I know from working there, and I would love to use everybody and all the settings and stuff. One day I'm going to come up with a story to use just for that. But every time I
There's
come up
all
with a new novel, like, oh, I
kinds.
could set it there, and it never really works out. But
But you'd be surprised what you could do. It always makes me go back To Kill a Mockingbird. That, the little southern town, and yet the big national, the big trial thing. I mean, there's a lot you can use. Look at, what was it? The alien one, the Close Encounters. Close Encounters.
Oh, yes.
Little tiny town, and yet this whole big sci-fi comes out of it.
That's true. That's very true. If you're creative enough, you can twist it. Yes, like that.
You can twist anything. That's what's fun
that.
about writing novels, is we can just let our own imagination take off and go where we want it to.
So one place you can really get away with away with that to the degree that you'd like to.
I loved it when people say, "What do you do for a living?" I said, "I lie. I'm a professional liar."
I love it. My favorite quote, I think Aaron Gansky said it when I had him on the show. He said, "My writing process is very simple. I create characters that people love, and then I ruin their lives."
Yeah.
That's exactly what we do. We ruin people's lives, and we figure out a way to fix it.
That's funny. I like that.
It's incredible. I love it. You have whole worlds inside of your head, and it's amazing.
I know. People ask us where we get our ideas or inspiration from life, from everywhere.
Yes.
I've always been the kind who, I love to look at old houses and old places, or an old farm that's gone derelict, and my first thought is, who lived there? What was their life like? What did they do? All of those things that we think of. And then we start making up stories about them. It's always have.
I love it. What does your writing process look like? Are you an organic writer? Do you like to outline, very detailed, or?
I have changed a lot. And the funny part is I've gone the opposite of most. A lot of writers start out total seat of the pants and discover they have to become an outliner. I was a total outliner and have discovered I'm becoming more and more seat of the pants.
Really?
Rachel Hawk calls it being a planster. And that's true.
Oh, I love that.
I do too, because I'm somewhere in that middle. I need a plan to follow. I have to know some of the scenes. What am I going to do to get them there? And I'll plot out about a third of the book that way, but not in detail. I just, this scene's about this, got to do this, got to do that. And then I let the characters go. And they change all kinds of things on me. Then I have to stop and kind of get a plan for the next section.
They do. They don't listen to it.
They absolutely do.
I created an entire character one time just to be the murder victim. That was the whole purpose. Ship falls in love with my protagonist, and now she's one of the main characters, and I can't get rid of her. I'm like,
that happened.
Well, you just decided to take over, didn't you?
And they do. But that's when you know the character is real. They're real to you. They'll be real to your reader. And when they have so much that they're talking to you, my favorite quote of all time comes from Karen Ball. And she said, and this is, I think, our process, is that God whispers to our hearts, and our hearts whisper back in stories.
Oh,
isn't that beautiful?
That is amazing. I love that. And that's so accurate, because it is, even if what you're writing is not, even if God isn't the center theme, it is a very much spiritual experience. It really is.
It is. It absolutely is. So when we talk about our characters talking to us, well, they kind of do. I mean,
I can't. It may have actually been you, that it was someone that I was in a course. It was a class or a keynote or something, and they said that they stopped themselves in a store from buying something. They said, "Oh, someone that was me. That looks. Yes. That was you.
That was me.
You." I thought it was you, but I wasn't
I
sure.
started to buy something that one of my characters would wear, and I realized as I said it, I was like, I'd never wear this. But she would.
Oh, my word.
It happens.
That's where good stories come from.
Yeah. That's where they come from.
I was reminiscing with one of my siblings one time about some good memories of camping trip or vacation or something, and part of me went, oh man, I do feel sorry for so and so because they didn't have that growing up. I was like, wait a minute, they don't exist. It's not a real person. That's my character.
That's exactly right. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. You start talking
like, well,
about
that's a good sign.
Like they're your best friend and you're telling somebody what they did and oh, wait a minute. Yeah, I know. My husband will occasionally remind me that you do realize they are not real, right?
You're like, yes,
okay.
Sort of.
Yeah, I mean, that's the way it is. So anyway.
Well, I have had such a good time talking with you. We've only got a few minutes left, and I kind of wanted to ask as we wrap things up, if you had one piece of advice to give to an aspiring writer, someone that maybe hasn't even been published yet, maybe not even about this specific genre, but just one good piece of advice in general about the writing industry, what would that be?
Enjoy your journey. It's really rare that your first book is going to sell. I mean, that would be extremely rare. So finish it, edit it, move on, and just enjoy the journey that you're on. I have made lifetime friends, deep friends. My critique partners and I, 3 of us have been together for 14 years.
Wow.
They're my best friends. And one lives in Texas and one lives in Minnesota. But we're on the phone, we're on email all the time. We're back and forth together, working together, brainstorming, doing things. And that's part of the journey. That's what you enjoy, the meeting people like you and sharing and networking. It's a whole wonderful time. And for the Christian writer, God has a time and a place. So let him worry about that and enjoy what you do.
I love that. I was, I think it was the orientation of my first Blue Ridge conference, and I think it was Michelle Cox was giving the opening, the stuff for the people that were there for the first time, and she said, this industry is all about relationships, not even about connections, but about relationships.
It is.
Be that somebody that's going to help you get published or somebody that you can just talk with about your stories and grow close with over that kind of that shared bond. And it really is. Oh,
you never know. Like I say, our latest book came out November 2018. And my first class was 14 years prior to that with Eva Marie Everson. And now, so you don't know. I never would have thought that she and I would co-author a book. Not 14 years ago, I sure didn't, So
it's amazing. Yep.
All about networking and friendships. Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for being on the show. I've enjoyed speaking with you, and I hope to have you back again. Maybe we'll talk about playwriting or the theater or something one time.
But this is fun. This is my most fun podcast that I've done. This has been great.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
It.
I've loved speaking with you. With you. Well, thank you guys for watching, and we will see you next week.